Welcome to the Watershed Wednesdays Forum. This presentation is going to be about Carson City's Drainage Manual, LID, and other updates. And I'm your presenter, Robert Fellows. I'm the floodplain manager for Carson City. I also am the chief stormwater engineer. And if you have any questions or want me to send me an email, I've got my email address there at the bottom, rfellows@carson.org. An overview of the discussion today will be Chapter 1220, Low Impact Development, Carson City's Drainage Manual, how LID works in the Drainage Manual, update on Carson City's Floodplain Ordinance, status on floodplain maps and area drainage plans, and also the status on FEMA grant applications the city is working on right now. So Carson City is going to add a new section to the municipal code. It's called Low Impact Development. It will be section 1220. And the purpose of LID is stated below here. I'm just going to read through these. The city is committed to stormwater and drainage management programs that protect water quality and water supply by employing watershed-based approaches that balance environmental, conservation, and economic considerations. Urbanization has led to the increase in impervious surface areas, resulting in increased water runoff, causing the transport of pollutants to downstream receiving waters. The city seeks to manage rainwater and urban runoff while mitigating the undesirable impacts of development and urbanization. LID development standards are widely recognized as sensible approaches to maintain the quantity and quality of stormwater and non-stormwater runoff. Management of stormwater and non-stormwater runoff is accomplished by setting standards and practices that maintain, improve, or restore the natural hydrologic contours of the site, reduce runoff, improve water quality, and provide groundwater recharge. A few more items under the purpose are LID development standards promote public health, safety, and general welfare through standards and incentives to ensure both private and public development provide adequate protection for citizens and property, to minimize offsite runoff of properties, to minimize and control erosion and pollution impacts on the natural environment, to minimize maintenance costs for drainage and flood control systems, and to recognize stormwater as a resource. While the city seeks to minimize offsite runoff from properties through the implementation of LID development standards, compliance with this chapter will not ensure that there won't be any unauthorized discharge of pollutants to the waters of the United States. So that's quite a bit of items that we list under the purpose, but they all make sense as far as what LID can do to help improve water quality. We're now to the Carson City Drainage Manual, and I wanted to point out a few things that the manual has that's different from before. First of all of the previous drainage criteria from the Division 14 of the Development Standards are included in the manual. The manual requires low impact development for all new development and redevelopment. And the manual provides control design criteria for both flow control and volume-based control of stormwater. The other change that we've done in the manual is that we've changed the minimum design storm from the 5-year 24-hour storm to the 10-year 24-hour storm. And so what we're doing there is that the criteria before is that the basin's size is based on the difference between the pre and the post storm of a 5-year event. Now it'll be the pre and post difference from a 10-year storm. Some other key items in the design manual is that the LID design criteria allows some flexibility on the LID controls that may be not suited for all of the sites in Carson City. Some sites have high groundwater or some other things, possibly wellhead protection, that some of the BMPs that would be used normally in a LID situation wouldn't be available for those. And so there's some flexibility in the design of LID. The other thing is we've got a 1-to-1 volume credit for LID facilities to detention volume. So if someone wants to do more, that will certainly go as a credit against the volume of a detention basin. The manual also provides a list of various BMPs and LID kind of controls that either source control or different ways that they can treat the runoff from the site and filter the pollutants out. And at the end of the manual, we've got recommendations on maintenance for the various types of LID BMPs that are used on the site. So how does LID work in the drainage manual? First of all, the LID is not a separate chapter in the drainage manual. It's incorporated in the manual. So as you're working through a site and looking at the impacts of drainage, you're also considering the LID as you design the site and look at, what type of impervious areas do you have, how those connect to like the landscaping requirement, the road, where the storm drain is. All those things matter. So it's not like an afterthought that you would figure a way to add in an LID BMP at the end of the design. So the criteria for LID, you've got a choice between flow control or volume control. So if you're going to use flow, you have to design your LID facility to a 2-year flow, 2-year design flow. And then if you're going to do a volume, we've got a formula that calculates the 90% annual runoff volume. So those will be used in your design for those facilities. Some key items for LID design is to figure out you've got either a non-polluting generating impervious surface or pollution generating impervious surfaces. So if you've on the non-pollution generating impervious surfaces, like roofs that don't leach, would be considered clean water, and you've got things like paved bicycle paths, sidewalks, things like that that are separated from where motor vehicles are parked. Those would be considered non-polluting. Fenced fire lanes, and of course you've got maintenance roads that are not used by vehicles. Those would be considered non-polluting sources. Pollution generating impervious surfaces would be things that are subject to vehicle use. So we've got a list of things here. Parking lots, obviously surfaces subject to industrial activities, storage of materials that might leach and run off those industrial sites. Metal roofs that aren't coated, those have possibly materials that leach off of the roof. And also you've got roofs that may be subject to venting manufacturing pollutants. Those would be considered pollution generating impervious surfaces. And basically any other surface that has a regular use of motor vehicles would tend to be pollution generating. We've got some criteria that uh, are high use sites, and a list of what that means mainly has to do with petroleum products, and also high use intersections, road intersections that have ADT of 25,000 vehicles or more, uh, any side intersecting roadways of 15,000 ADT would be included in that. We've got commercial industrial sites that also generate traffic, would be in the high use generating sites. And we got a list, vehicle, customer, and visitor parking with counts of 300 vehicles per day. And also at the very end there, commercial on-street parking areas that expect counts, ADT counts greater than 7,500. Some other high use sites that generate high concentrations of like oil and petroleum products obviously would be fueling stations and facilities, other commercial or industrial sites that store petroleum, those kind of things, or have routine delivery of that type of thing. We've got like fleet or equipment storage areas, obviously any kind of outdoor areas that have hydraulic equipment. Those would all be considered high use sites that generate these pollutants. Some other things in the manual, we list some BMPs that can be used in this area. And not obviously we can't list all of them. There's lots of different ones around. We do reference the Truckee Meadows manual and some other manuals that may be used in certain situations. But we tried to include LID devices and facilities that would fit in Carson City. We give a list of kind of how they rate with each other. Ones are good for certain things like heavy metals or nutrients or different pollutants. And so it'd be good to look at those and figure out what fits the site as you're going through the design. We also list maintenance criteria in the manual. So if you do pick an LID facility, it's good to know how to maintain that. You may look at long-term maintenance. One might be a better fit than the other one, given maintenance considerations. Update to the Carson City's Floodplain Ordinance. So the ordinance was submitted to the DA for review in May of 2019. The update included the Carson River hydraulic model. It also included the Carson River hydraulic model management, distribution, and update guide. There were some other definitions and terms added to the ordinance. We also included some criteria related to fencing, landscaping berms in a special flood hazard area. Currently, there's no law or regulation against fencing the floodplain. I know people think, yes, it's going to break away. That would be true if there was a lot of flow, but if there's a minimum amount of flow, fencing and landscaping tends to guide the water, to undesirable locations And so we put some criteria in the ordinance related to that. Not to say that it would be not allowed, but just to be able to think about how it's being done and how it can, um, not guide water to where it's not desired to go. So we did submit that. That it's kind of uh, not gone forward because the DA wants to reformat the city's code, and so that whole reformatting takes quite a long process, and so it's kind of held up in that respect. Now I'd like to give you a status on floodplain mapping and area drainage plans in Carson City. We've got a few going and give you an idea of what's going on there. Last May, we went through a process on the Gonai Watershed and did a restudy and remap, and that became effective in May 2020. And basically, it includes the airport and areas north of the airport um, down to the freeway. This one here, we completed a area drainage plan. This is the North Carson area drainage plan, and it was adopted in March of 2020. And the areas that were looked at was mainly areas north of Highway 50 East and east of I-580, and that's kind of the Sugar Loaf area, Gonai Canyon, Watershed, Eagle Valley Golf Course there in the green, and then kind of New Empire is down uh, between the river and just south of Highway 50. So that was a process we went through. We identified, I think, 9 different projects, and they were rated. And that report was adopted by the board, and the improvements were put in a priority, and that went very well. This next one here is a map and restudy of the Voltaire and Solomon watershed, and we're currently waiting for the 90-day public process to begin. It hasn't begun yet. We haven't received the preliminary maps, but we do expect the maps to come anytime this spring. And I know there's quite a few people in the area that are happy with the results. A lot of the special flood hazard area is gone. There's a shallow um, flood hazard, 500-year, less than 1 foot, 100-year floodplain that runs from the freeway to the south where it connects to Spooner and then runs north along Solomon and towards the linear ditch. This area drainage plan, this is the West Carson area drainage plan. It's we're still working on the report and the items that would help reduce or eliminate flooding on the west side of Carson City. The we went through a public process and got some input from folks that joined us on a Zoom meeting, and we're basically dealing with uh, flows from Kings Canyon Creek, Ash Canyon Creek, coming through pretty much the center of town. And the map kind of shows um, the majority of the water tends to go to the southeast and eventually ends up near Governor's Field. And in this map, you can kind of see the flow patterns, and the areas in red are areas that are ponding water, I think, greater than um, a foot or something like that, probably 2 feet or more. So anyway, we're going through that process, and it should be completed here pretty soon. We've got a couple of grant applications that we've submitted to FEMA. One of them is the Sutro Terra Storm Drain and Basin Scoping Project, and that's not actually building anything, but it's scoping what can be built and the costs to get that done and evaluated. So that's a scoping project grant. And then the other one is the Maxwell Basin Flood Mitigation Project, and that is a basin in the Gonai watershed that would uh, eliminate some of the flood hazard in that watershed. All right, well, that's all I have for uh, this update in this presentation, and I think we are going to go to questions. All right, thanks a lot.